Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek, and happy Halloween! This is it, the final episode of our 31 Days of Halloween Reviews. So I want to thank everybody who's come along the journey with me, whether you've been watching each day of this 2017 Halloween season, or whether you're stumbling upon the playlist well after the season and have checked out a few videos. I appreciate the company on the journey. And if you've stuck with it, then you might have been able to guess the final title we talk about today long before you saw the thumbnail for the video, but we are talking about The Tomb of Dracula. And this is something I've been teasing earlier this month, and it's just such a great addition. I'm glad Marvel released this. So this month of October in 2017, Marvel has released 3 of their classic horror comics and new compilations. We have The Tomb of Dracula in Volume 1, we have Werewolf by Night, which we covered in a previous video, and Marvel Horror, the comics, or the magazines. I forgot exactly what the title is, but the link is up there in the top right-hand corner. We covered that as well. So all their great horror stuff. I believe they'd already put out some editions of Frankenstein, somewhat previous, but there's still some great editions out there. Nothing new, so I decided not to cover one of those. But this edition of Tomb of Dracula is just a beautiful edition. Nice printing, and some really great pieces written about it in the back. I chose this title for the big day for a number of reasons. First of all, Dracula himself is just such a culturally prominent, iconic character. Really, across cultures and across multiple countries and nationalities, the character of Dracula serves such a profound purpose in all of our mythologies and mindsets. So maybe we'll talk about that first before I get into a specific edition here. But types of monsters are out there in the public consciousness. The Universal classic films that we had in the 30s and 40s, they really did set the pace and really set the tone for which monsters were going to be that true iconic classification. So you did have Dracula, and you had Frankenstein, and the Wolfman, and the Mummy, and the Creature from the Black Lagoon, and the Invisible Man, and so forth and so on. And those are classifications that it really just stuck in place, and they've shown up in our culture over and over and over again, immediately really with the Abbott and Costello films, and then of course up into the 90s with Monster Squad, and just over and over again. These are the classic archetypes that a lot of our cultural fears have really stuck into. It's interesting, though, that a lot of those stories did infuse those monsters with pathos. At least those original Universal classic films. That was the great thing about Frankenstein. I mean, James Whale's Frankenstein's films are just masterpieces. It really, you feel for the creature. Same thing with the Wolfman and even the Mummy. Certainly with the Creature from the Black Lagoon. So they really strike a chord with the viewer because you're horrified by these creatures. At the same time, you empathize with them, and that terrifies you too, because that shows you how you're not very far off from common ground with these creatures, these things you fear so much, or these things that you would call evil and turn away from as the other. But Dracula's different. Dracula, he's certainly been filled with pathos over at times in the history of his presence in our movies and films and comics and everything like that. But most often, he's just pure evil. That's how Bela Lugosi certainly played him. Even in the wonderful Francis Ford Coppola film that tried to imbue him with a little more pathos, he was still just pretty evil. Even in the end, even with the whole Mina love story, you still didn't really necessarily empathize with the guy. And I think that's probably why he's really at the top of the pile for who we think of when we think of vicious monster characters. I mean, the vampires in general have been filled with pathos. I mean, we have everything from some very good tales like Interview with a Vampire from Anne Rice, or we have, the Twilight stuff. And but there have been all kinds of shows and movies and books and just everywhere about vampires. But I think Dracula, that original film with Bela Lugosi, but also the original novel that Bram Stoker just really pegged this character. The vampire was just such a loaded evil for cultures throughout Europe. Eastern Europe to Western Europe, really. And as I mentioned in our Werewolf by Night video, a lot of the delineations that we have today of different monsters all culminated in the original idea of the vampire. I mean, certainly our ideas of zombies and our ideas of werewolves themselves were all really culminated. If you read Bram Stoker's Dracula, for example, you really see all of those there. I mean, Count Dracula is the original of all monsters. He can do it all, and it represents all of those dangers. So he's the ultimate other, to the point where he's not just a representation of a human other. He's not just a representation of how we might fear other people that we don't understand or don't have a lot in common with. Dracula is the embodiment of a demonic other. I mean, he really is a Satan-type character. And that was really prominent in the original. So Dracula is the big baddie, even though they've tried to make him, I think maybe Frank Langella's was the first one to really try and make him sexy and stuff like that. Of course, there was the somewhat recent television series that they did with him and stuff, but there's a long road between Dracula and Barnabas Collins. And that's okay. I think that's as it should be. I enjoy characters like Barnabas Collins, but Dracula is that just pure embodiment of evil. So what does that do for us? Well, that gives us a real face, an evil that we can react against. We don't have to stumble up at any point and worry about, oh, wait a minute, we should have been a little more open to this character and a little more understanding. We know that we need to do that to other people, and oftentimes characters in our fiction help us along that path. But Dracula, usually it's understood that his character is going to be somebody that we just need to react against. We need characters like that. It's sort of the polar opposite of the aspirational heroes that I talk about often in my other videos, non-Halloween related videos, of how Superman and Captain America, for example, are supposed to be those pure good aspirational archetypes of heroes that will never reach their level of goodness, but we must always try to strive for it, because we won't reach quite as high as we would have otherwise. So they need to be up there. They need to be unattainable, but still our goal at all times. On the flip side of that, we need characters like Dracula. We need pure, utter evil to react against, so that we don't fall into the trap of, well, is anything evil, and we don't become these just moral relativists about everything to the extent of, genocides and such and mass shootings and whatever. Well, I wouldn't call that necessarily wrong, that silliness. So we do need that in a culture. A society needs that to survive. And this is why we have these different types of characters in our mythology. It's just built into our psychological needs are built into the culture like that. So we need characters like Dracula. And as far as a big baddie, Dracula was just so well formed from the beginning by Bram Stoker. And he's had so many wonderful interpretations since then, like the Bela Lugosi and like the Hammer horror stuff that they were doing for a while. And even today. And this Marvel's Tomb of Dracula comic, I think, is absolutely one of those examples of just absolute artistic interpretations of the character that really brought him along with us in our journey through time, and keeps him relevant and keeps his purpose fulfilled in our culture. I don't know, I haven't really done the research to tell you if there was ever any other villain that had a main title before like this. I mean, horror comics were certainly prevalent about a decade before these came on the scenes in the 70s. But to have this kind of character, I mean, he's existing within the Marvel heroic universe. And he does cross over and have adventures against some of the heroes at times and stuff. So it's really a big deal to have him have his solo title that was so popular. In fact, he remained in publication well after all of the other horror titles had ceased. Werewolf by Night ended, Frankenstein, and all of those, and Tomb of Dracula was still in publication right up to the year of 1979, actually. So that's pretty impressive, and it speaks to the character's importance to our culture and how much we need to spend time with this guy to function as a society and to keep our values in check. The title took a little while to find its dream team. First, well, from the beginning, you had Gene Colan on art, and his art is just amazing. You can see from the images there, he portrays just the perfect amount of the uncanny, but also good specific idealized art. And we have that Dracula's a horrific character. He does a wonderful job of putting Dracula in that in-between space. He is a human like us, even when he's trying to portray himself as a human, once he's completely fully generated and he looks more human, but he still adds that little quality to him that is brilliant. So Gene Colan stayed on the entire time. To begin with, the series was written by Gary Conway, and he only stayed for about 7 issues. Then Archie Goodwin came on for a couple issues and brought on some of the more popular characters, brought on Rachel Van Helsing, Abraham Van Helsing's grandfather from the original novel there. And Gardner Fox took up a couple of issues after that, but soon enough, Marv Wolfman came onto the series. And Marv Wolfman, everything just sort of clicked once he came onto the series, and he stuck with it until the end. And Marv Wolfman brought in characters like Quincy Harker, the son of Jonathan and Marina Harker, and Mina Harker from the Bram Stoker's novel, and brought in a bunch of wonderful characters like that. Even created Blade. Blade got his start in the Tomb of Dracula series, and we've already talked about Blade a little bit in the other Marvel compilation that he popped up in, but this is where he had his start. So just an amazing title to also bring us these other characters. So the writer and the art, top notch, and the whole thing reads like a novel, really. One of the people who wrote one of the little blurbs about the compilation in the back draw attention to this, that Marv Wolfman's approach was very much what we'd expect today, but it wasn't commonly done back then, but he was telling long form stories and continuities and developing little subplots to give us closure along the way, and that was nice. So he was really telling these long form things we've come to expect from the Marvel style, certainly in the 80s and 90s, but this was being done in the 70s in this horror title. And as a result, the entire series, if you read all of the volumes, it really reads like a full novel. By the end, you do have a good, solid character arc for each character, and you have development, and you can see what were the themes of it, even with the different writers to begin with. So, really is I'm not necessarily going to say that this is just as important to our culture and history as Bram Stoker's Dracula, the novel, but I think that in terms of Dracula's history, this is a must read for anybody who wants to seriously understand the character and not just spend a little bit of fun time with him here and there. If you're really curious about the character, this is a huge influential pillar of the character's existence in our culture and his evolution with us. So, wonderful title. I highly recommend it. Again, I'm not going into too many specifics. I do highly recommend this. It's just released this month. Tomb of Dracula, Volume 1, brand new compilation. It has everything, all of the stories in order up to that certain point for the first volume. I can't wait for the next one to be released. And they've even hinted in this story towards the end that Marvel's working on a possible reboot of the title, in time for his own, I guess it would be 40th anniversary at this point, I don't know. English professors don't do math, but there's that. So, recommend that. Check it out. You can get it for $10 on Amazon if you just want to read it digitally, but the actual hardcovers are beautiful. I have one of those, and that's great to read it from as well. So it's Halloween. I want to thank everybody for sticking with me. And even if you just dipped in now and then and listened to a couple episodes here and there, I appreciate it. The whole point of this was to allow a way for people to celebrate Halloween, or maybe a little bit more like me. Maybe you're a little nerdy and geeky, and I've got the academic thing thrown on top of that just to utterly obliterate my social skills and social life. So you're not going to catch me at the parties and such. Now that I have a daughter, I enjoy taking her trick-or-treating, but after that, it's just really fun to go back home and you grab a pizza and plan out your movies or your reading for the night and really get a little cerebral celebration. So the whole point behind this was to keep that going the whole month long, and hopefully others have been able to do that with some of these titles that I've recommended, or just enjoying the videos and hearing about the titles. The channel will return now to comic book and superhero analysis, so we'll broaden that out a little bit. We won't deal strictly with Halloween-related stuff anymore past this month, but got a lot of stuff planned and some good things on the way, so do stick around and stay tuned. Thanks for subscribing. Please recommend the channel, share the videos with people you know. Make sure you click those little thumbs up. That'll help me grow, help me have more time to spend all these videos, and let me know in the comments section what you would like to see coming up from the channel. Now that we're no longer dealing with Halloween stuff, what are some titles, some superhero titles you'd like discussed, or issues or whatever, then I can consider those. Also, let me know what you're doing for Halloween. Are you like me and you don't really do the whole dealing with other people thing? You want to just watch a movie or read some comics quietly alone? That's great. Let me know. Or if you are not like me at all and you like to go have a total blowout and have an actual life, then tell me about that too. I'd love to know how my viewers are spending their Halloween. I will see you later this week with our post-Halloween video, getting back to the business as usual. Until then, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the superhero stories you love. Thanks for watching, and happy Halloween!